Building upon our understanding of the Recovery Fund's purpose and structure, we now focus on the specific financial limits that govern compensation from the fund. These limits are designed to protect both consumers and the financial stability of the fund itself. As established under ARS Section 32218-8A, the Arizona Real Estate Recovery Fund provides monetary compensation to members of the public who have suffered actual financial loss due to the fraudulent, dishonest, or illegal conduct of a licensed real estate professional. However, the statute imposes clear limits on the amount any one person can receive to ensure that the fund remains sustainable and available for future claimants. The maximum financial compensation that an aggrieved person may receive from the Recovery Fund for a single real estate transaction is $30,000. This means that if a consumer obtains a valid court judgment confirming that a licensee caused them financial harm during a licensed real estate transaction, the highest amount the fund can reimburse for that specific transaction is $30,000. This limit applies regardless of the total damages awarded by the court. The law ensures fairness and consistency by providing equal access to recovery while preventing the fund from being depleted by a single large claim. The statute also sets an overall cap of $90,000 per licensee, which means that the total amount paid out of the fund for claims against one real estate professional cannot exceed $90,000, even if multiple consumers file claims against that same person. Once the fund reaches the $90,000 payment threshold for that licensee, no further payments can be made, and the licensee's license is automatically terminated under ARS Section 32218-8B until the fund is fully reimbursed. This rule reinforces accountability and ensures that the financial responsibility for misconduct ultimately rests with the licensee rather than the industry as a whole. To illustrate how these limits work, consider a scenario in which a broker in Tucson defrauds 3 different clients in separate transactions. One client suffers a loss of $25,000, another loses $40,000, and a third loses $50,000. Even though the combined losses total $115,000, the Recovery Fund will only compensate up to $50,000, $30,000 per transaction, meaning the first 2 clients can receive their full losses of $25,000 and $30,000 respectively. But the third client will receive only $30,000. In total, the fund will pay out $30,000, $85,000 for this broker, leaving a small remaining balance under the $90,000 cap. If additional victims later come forward, no further compensation can be issued until the broker repays the fund. This structured limitation serves an important policy function. By setting reasonable caps, the law ensures that the fund remains solvent and capable of helping many victims rather than being exhausted by a few large claims. It also encourages consumers to pursue full recovery through civil courts and insurance claims whenever possible, before turning to the fund as a last resort. The Recovery Fund is intended to supplement the justice system, not replace it. The process for obtaining payment is also carefully regulated. A claimant must first obtain a civil judgment against the licensee in an Arizona court and demonstrate that they made every reasonable effort to collect that judgment. Only when it becomes clear that the licensee cannot satisfy the debt, such as through bankruptcy or lack of assets, may the claimant petition the court to order payment from the Recovery Fund. Once approved, the Arizona Department of Real Estate processes the payment up to the $30,000 limit for that transaction. It is important to note that the fund only covers actual financial losses, not punitive damages, attorney fees, or emotional distress. For instance, if a court awards a victim $50,000 in damages, including $10,000 in legal fees and $10,000 in punitive damages, the fund will only consider the $30,000 portion directly related to financial loss as eligible for reimbursement. This ensures that the fund remains focused on compensating real economic harm caused by licensee misconduct. The statutory limits on payments also reinforce the importance of proper supervision and compliance within brokerage operations. Brokers are responsible under ARS Section 32-2153A17 for the acts of their salespersons, which means that negligence in supervising agents can result in liability and disciplinary action. A broker who allows an agent to mishandle trust funds or misrepresent property details could find themselves facing both civil judgments and recovery fund claims. Therefore, maintaining ethical standards and strict oversight not only protects the public, but also safeguards the broker's reputation and the integrity of the industry. From a broader perspective, the payment limits reflect Arizona's balanced approach to consumer protection. They provide meaningful compensation to victims without creating an undue financial burden on the state's licensees. Because the fund is financed through small fees paid by every applicant and renewal, it represents a collective commitment among real estate professionals to uphold accountability and fairness in all transactions. Each licensee contributes to maintaining public trust in the industry, knowing that the recovery fund stands as a safeguard against the damage caused by rare instances of misconduct. Review summary. In this section, you learn that the maximum amount an aggrieved person may receive from the Arizona Real Estate Recovery Fund for a single real estate transaction is $30,000, as provided in ARS Section 32-2188A. The total compensation limit for claims against one licensee is $90,000. These limits are designed to preserve the solvency of the fund and ensure that multiple consumers can receive compensation when harmed by the same licensee. The fund covers actual financial losses only and requires a civil judgment before payment. Once the fund pays a claim, the responsible licensee's license is terminated until they repay the amount owed. Discussion. Why is the maximum payment from the recovery fund limited to $30,000 per transaction? Answer. To ensure fairness, protect the fund's financial stability, and allow multiple victims to receive compensation rather than one claim depleting the fund. What is the total cap on payments made for claims against a single licensee? Answer. $90,000. As outlined in ARS, Section 322188A. Why must a claimant first obtain a civil judgment before applying to the recovery fund? Answer. Because the fund is a last resort intended to compensate victims only after all other legal remedies have been exhausted. Does the recovery fund cover attorney fees or emotional damages? Answer. No, it only covers verified financial losses directly resulting from the licensee's actions. What happens to the licensee after a payment is made from the recovery fund on their behalf? Answer. The license is automatically terminated and cannot be reinstated until the licensee repays the fund in full. Closing remarks. The financial limits placed on the Arizona Real Estate Recovery Fund demonstrate the state's balanced approach to consumer protection. By setting clear boundaries on compensation, Arizona ensures that the fund remains a sustainable safety net for many victims rather than a single one. These limits also serve as a reminder to all real estate professionals of the gravity of their fiduciary duties and the consequences of violating the public's trust. The fund, supported by every licensee's contributions, stands as both a shield for consumers and a reflection of the real estate community's collective responsibility to uphold the highest ethical standards in every transaction.